Okay, so welcome. The topic, as you know, is after a loss knocks you down, reclaiming your financial stability on your terms. What makes me qualified to talk about this is that I had such a loss and it did knock me down, and I'm in the process of reclaiming my own financial stability. So I really know what I'm talking about here. In October 2015, my husband, who I'd been with for almost 25 years, was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And we had 11 months of chemo and cancer and medical bills and all of that. And it really gutted our finances. So that was a practical consequence of a really unexpected circumstance. But this happens, right? Life sometimes blindsides us. We can't always predict what's going to happen, and sometimes it just happens and we have to deal with it. Okay, so there are 6 areas of loss. The one that's most understood is losing a person. So I lost my husband, he died, but there's also you lose a person in a divorce or a separation. And those losses we aren't really encouraged to grieve, except that there is some grieving to be done. We might lose a friend to a disagreement, or our children might go off to college or move away or take a job a long distance away. All of these are losses. We might be downsized instead of promoted. We might be forced to resign because of age but not have enough money to live. Or there might be a merger and you might become redundant. You might know what you're meant to be doing, have a passion for something, but you've tried and you've tried and you've tried and you can't make it work. You might lose a home or an investment property. You might lose a pet, or you might lose a dream. So you might have really wanted something and then not been able to fulfill it. What happens is that these have very practical implications. For example, when my husband died, my rent didn't go down by half, but I was left with half the income. When you lose a job and can't find a job for a while, there's not just a financial hit, there's also an emotional hit. So we might start to feel paralyzed and not sure how to act, what to do. We might start to doubt ourselves, start to doubt our competence, start to doubt the decisions that we're making. We may lose our support system. We may have failed and failed and failed at something we were really trying to get done. And it might have been because of the environment. For example, I bought a property in Syracuse right before the market came crashing down. It didn't go well. I thought that I could do real estate investing. I thought it was a great idea. I failed. And one of the things that happened when I failed at that is that I started wondering if I was really as competent as I thought I would, if I really was going to be able to get done what I wanted to get done. So how do you move through these? Because the point of this is, okay, life has blindsided you in some way. There has been probably an emotional and a financial hit. So how do you navigate that? How do you move through it in a way that is powerful, that allows you to come back to yourself? Money is out there. There are lots and lots and lots of ways to make money, more than there ever have been in the history of time. So there are jobs and careers in companies. There are online options. There are I worked at one point for an advertising agency, and there was someone who was hired to tweet. They just tweeted all day long. That was their job. So there are amazing opportunities for all kinds of things, and more, it is possible for you to make a living doing something you love. After a loss, what it does is it reduces your capacity. In my case, my ability to remember things went down. And in the job that I had, I was a medical editor, so I did really detailed, really specific work. I have not been able to focus. That's just coming back. So there are feelings that happen after a loss which are valid and real, and they can be overwhelming. If you try to stuff them down just to get back to action, which is frankly our instinct, because it looks like we can't feel our feelings and also move on. And that's just not true. You can put them off. So you can say, okay, I'm at work. It's not appropriate for me to burst into tears in this moment. And when I get home, I'm going to allow myself to do that. Stuffing it down creates a volcano. It's a really bad idea. Since I knew that my focus was not as good as it was, my memory was not as good as it was, one of the things that I've done and other people I know who have experienced loss have done is they basically create a net for themselves. So if you know that you're going to have trouble in certain aspects, and you really need to look at how your loss has impacted you to figure out where you're going to need your nets, you can have someone have your back. Just paying attention to what you're doing. So if something gets missed, it doesn't drop through the cracks. There's someone else behind to take care of it. You're going to take baby steps, because one of the things you need to do is you need to build back confidence. A loss like mine, where I lost my husband, our lives were massively wound around each other across 25 years. And so I knew who I was as myself and who he was as him, but then there was an us, which was a big part of who I was. And so disentangling that has been really challenging. For me, it's been a matter of taking baby steps after I lost my husband to allow for my shortcomings, my inability to do certain things. And I was impatient with myself. I'm like, can't you just snap back? Why can't you just snap back? But the fact of the matter is, after a loss, it's not that easy to just snap back. So in order not to have your life fall apart, you need to set yourself up so that you can catch the places things might drop through the cracks. The point is, you have to get back to yourself, because when we experience a loss, we lose a piece of ourselves. We lose who we were in relation to that person or that experience or whatever our loss is. Once we can get back to ourselves, we can think about what to do much more resourcefully. There's something that people say, when emotion goes up, capacity goes down. So when we're swept up in the emotions of a loss, it's really hard to think about what to do to solve the issues and challenges that we're facing. So getting back to resourcefulness, building up your confidence again by celebrating your small wins. So if you do something, even if it's a very small something, it's really important to celebrate it. Basically what you're doing is you're building yourself back up. The affluence code was something that I designed because what I noticed was that there were people who thrived and people who did not thrive in business and in life. And the people that I was looking at were all really remarkable people, except that some were thriving and some were not. And I started searching for a way that people could thrive being themselves. And I couldn't find anything, frankly. And so what I did was I invented something called the affluence code. And the affluence code is what brings you the most joy, what makes you happiest. So when you're doing this, you feel most fully yourself. And after a loss especially, it's important to really lean into what fuels us, what makes us most happy, what brings us the most joy. There's a saying, time flies when you're having fun. When you're focusing on what you most love, time flies. So there are three lenses, and everybody's got all three, but one of them is the place where you really need to spend the most time. The first one I call purpose. This is typically the way that the world and companies and governments and stuff are set up. It's doing meaningful work. So everybody has work that they want to do that matters in the world, that gets results. The second is a lens I call love. That's nurturing one-on-one relationships. And the third is a lens I call charity, and that is serving a thriving ecosystem or community. So what I mean by ecosystem is it could be your family. It could be your family and friends. It could be your neighborhood. It could be your city, your state, your country, your world. That's why I say ecosystem, because it is as big as it is for you. When you are operating in the way that's most natural for you, where your first focus is in the place where you're happiest, then everything just clicks along like magic. It's those moments that you have known in the past where you're just doing something and you're doing it your way, and suddenly you're getting all the results you desire. And it's just easy. It's just so easy. And you don't quite understand how, but that's how it is. That's operating congruent with your affluence code. It's just taking your natural way of being and then making all decisions and all actions from there. So, strategies. Financial stability requires being able to thrive in a life worth living. If your first lens is charity, then your best strategy is to leverage the influencers and the connectors you know to deliver clients opportunities and income. If your first lens is love, your best strategy is to amplify your self-care and then call on those who love and believe in you for emotional and practical support. If your first lens is purpose, your best strategy is to clarify the goal and identify the steps between you and the desired outcome. Then just follow the plan. So you can see that we all care about all of these things, and we all need to be able to do all of these things. And the point of the affluence code is if you have them in the appropriate order for you, then it's like you connected up a circuit and everything just fires. So how do you increase your income and reprioritize your expenses after a loss? Be sure to open your bills. This happened to me. I almost had the electric cut off because what happened after my husband died was I was still getting massive numbers of medical bills, and it was so painful to open them that I didn't. And so I created for myself some additional pain and stress as a result of that way of being. Track your current expenses. When there's more than enough income, which in my case there were two incomes coming in, so we had enough to pay for everything and extra. Neither of us was particularly mindful about where money might be going that would not be according to our best priorities. Once you figure out where the money's going, then you can say, okay, well, where do I want it to be going? Do I want to go to the movies with my nephew, or do I want to get this magazine that I'm not reading anyway. And you can make different choices. If you don't have enough income and you're in a job, basically what you have to do is you just stabilize in the job. You may not have the capacity to do anything more than that until after you come back to yourself a bit. If you're not in a job, for example, I do affluence code and bad widow consulting, then you can lean into the work that you do. The other thing that I wound up doing, just to increase my capacity for work, to increase my ability to regain my confidence about being able to focus across a period of time, is I started taking some smaller jobs that would give me some extra income. So that gave me some cash flow, and it gave me an increase in confidence, and it built up my energy to be able to work for long periods of time. When Dave was sick, I wound up doing consulting calls from the hospital room as he was being hydrated. This is not ideal. Finally, hold back some money. So it needs to be that not every dollar goes out to the bills. You have to have a life worth living. And so what that requires is that you start having some money that's not being spent so that you can say to yourself that you have plenty. Might not be a lot of plenty, but you have more than you need for the bills. When we've experienced loss and are under financial stress, money is the biggest thing. Money is not the only element that makes up true affluence. So true affluence is having money, health, time, business or career, and relationships you desire. What happens with money is that we really judge ourselves very harshly according to how much or how little money we have. We say things to ourselves like, well, that was irresponsible. So there's more shame connected with the topic of money than almost any other. In order to increase your income, you have to make your life into a life worth living. When we are crunched, when we are stressed in this particular way, what we do very often is we contract our expectations. We say to ourselves, I just have to have enough money to pay the bills. But if we don't have anything to look forward to, then there's not much joy in what we're doing. And there's not much reason to make more money. What I want you to do is an exercise. Measure the gaps between your current circumstances and your ideal life in each of the 5 areas. Basically what that does is it gives you a roadmap. It says, okay, I'm here and I want to get there, and these are the things that I need to do to get there. And each of the 3 lenses will have a different way to do it, which I showed you on the previous slide. The other really cool thing about this is if you get traction in any of the areas, it will move forward your ability to increase your income in the area of money, because they're all interrelated. So the more you can build back your own resourcefulness, the more capacity you have to expand your income and get back to financial stability. So in a moment, I'm going to take some questions. Basically, these are my 2 websites, affluencecode.com, badwidow.com. Lots and lots of resources on both of those to support you in both of these 2 areas. If you want to talk to me one-on-one, just schedule a call with me. I am glad to talk about whatever your specific challenges are. And then finally, I've been being asked for a crib sheet for the affluence code stuff, because once you start doing things congruent with who you are and you start making decisions and acting that way, it all gets very easy. But until you really get it, not so much. So that is my offer. It's a Q1 offer available for the next, basically till the end of March. And I invite you to take advantage of it. There's a special code for savvy ladies, and that's it. It's a wrap. So Maggie, are there any questions or?
Yes, thank you, Allison. We did have, I see a few questions come in, and I'll remind everyone you can email info@savvyladies.org if you have a question now, or you can also use the chat box. The first question we have for you is, I'm a new widow and I haven't had to work in over 15 years. How do I even begin to get back in the workforce?
Yes, that's a great question. You start very, very small. So you take a tiny job. I had a friend who was another widow, and she had a pop-up store. So I worked in her pop-up store for $10 an hour, just so that I could start knowing that I was able to do it, because I really had doubts. So start small and then build from there. So the pop-up store was the first thing, and then another person asked me, they knew that I volunteer tutored, so they asked me to tutor their child, and that was $25 an hour. So bit by bit, you grow your knowledge in yourself that you can do this. Does that help?
Okay, yes, thank you. Okay, another question we have for you is, I was let go from my job about a year ago and have been trying to get work independently for the last few months. I was really expecting to close a big deal, and the potential client just changed his mind, and I'm totally crushed. I feel like I'll never be able to build up my business. With this kind of loss, how can I move forward?
Okay. So this was a big one of the things about having one person that you're one deal, one person that you're counting on, is that the loss is absolutely crushing. I mean, it's much, much bigger than if you have a number of possibilities on the horizon. So what I would say is to really look at, and for any of you who are asking questions, if you want to call and actually talk to me, feel free to do so. What I would say is to really look at if that opportunity is one in an industry that you like, where else are there possibilities? Start putting out more seeds. There's someone that I follow who said, send out 5 ships and eat 3 frogs. 5 ships and 3 frogs. Because the ships go out and you don't quite know what's going to happen to them. Like they might shipwreck. They might take a long time to come back. They might have a good wind behind them when they're coming, but they will come back. Some of them will come back. So what I would encourage you to do is, first of all, grieve the loss. It's a hit, but it does not say anything about you. It doesn't say anything about your capacity. However, it feels like it does.
Okay, thank you. Good advice. Okay, another question is, do you have some advice for people that are also in debt as they're going through this?
Yes. If you're in debt, what you need to do is you need to create for yourself a life worth living. What that requires is that you have some things to look forward to. Self-care. So on my Bad Widow page, I have 10 tips to prioritize self-care or something like that. I can't remember the title. But anyway, it's about what are the things that you can do to have something to look forward to have something that's not just paying the bills. You have to pay down your debt, but you also have to have a life worth living. Choose to do things that don't cost any money or that cost very little money. But start having things that are worth doing. Nature pours a vacuum. So it's really hard to build from nothing. So if you're building from feeling like you're in debt, feeling fully in this lack mentality, if from that place, it's really hard to build. Once you're starting to feel good sometimes, to feel like you're coming back to yourself, because the whole thing is about getting back to your own resourcefulness, getting back to knowing that whatever your circumstances, you can handle them, but you can't do it if you're feeling broken. So the first step is to come back to yourself. And the first step is to make a life worth living. So my recommendation is allocate some money to the debt, but also allocate some money to doing something that's pleasurable. Now, if you really have nothing extra, those pleasurable things can be go for a walk, blow bubbles. They don't actually have to cost money. They only have to make you feel good.
Okay, thanks. And this is the last question for you. It's, what are some things I can do to stop doubting my judgment after a loss?
To start doubting your judgment after a loss, what you want to do is you want to see, that's tough. Like the real estate thing has dogged me for a long time. What you have to do is similar to an earlier question, you have to start taking baby steps. You have to look at the places in your life. Remember, there are 5 areas. That's why the 5 areas are important, because in some of the other areas you have really good judgment. The other thing to remember is that there's a lag time for results. So there are consequences for bad decisions, and that for me this real estate thing is a good example. There are bad decisions that have a lag time to get resolved. So you might be making good decisions from the moment you realized you made a bad decision, and it may have a little bit of lag time to catch up and turn it around. That's been my experience.
Okay. Okay. All right, so those are the questions we have. So I want to thank you, Alison, for a really great presentation, and thanks for sharing your personal story with all of us. For those of you who are looking at this screen now, we will be sending out all this information in an email if you didn't have a chance to write it down. And thank you, Alison, for your offer to our community. We hope that everyone will be joining us again. And thank you so much, Alison.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much for having me, Maggie.
Thanks. Bye-bye.